countries. Canada is Colorado's biggest trading partner, and its governor, Jared Polis, is in Vancouver today, and he joins me right now. Governor Polis, welcome back to Power Play.
A pleasure to be with you, Mike.
As I mentioned earlier in the intro, we're hearing that there are talks intensifying between Washington and Ottawa around this type of framework. What are you hearing right now about the possibility of a deal coming soon?
Well, look, first to acknowledge that the deal that we had in place was working well for both countries. So it was blowing up, certainly from my perspective, and many Americans' perspective, both Democrats and Republicans, without a good end goal or purpose in mind. Is it possible to do another deal? We sure hope so, that brings down tariffs and barriers on both sides. For instance, one of our crises in Colorado is the high cost of housing. We would love to reduce the tariff on timber imports from Canada that directly contribute to the cost of housing. So we certainly have our goals. As for when it will occur, the sooner the better. I wish it was last week. I wish it was last month. And tomorrow would be better than a month from now.
You know, you mentioned sort of the impetus of it. It's interesting because when all of these tariffs were first floated and first started, border security was given as the reason for imposing them. It's becoming increasingly clear, I think, from the Canadian side that the president sees them as a way of also forcing manufacturing to come back to the United States. Is that your sense of it? And do you think that it could mean no matter what allies like Canada do, that these tariffs will actually be in place to stay?
Very difficult to get into the mind or the motivations there. I think it is safe to say that border security, while always a concern, is something that America and Canada collaborated on and continue to collaborate on. And obviously there's legitimate concerns there, and both sides should step up and do better, but that's not properly addressed through a trade war. As for American manufacturing, we have a, as you know, hemispheric supply chain, Canada, Mexico, United States, and so many parts travel across the border. We use parts and materials from Canada. We're in, of course, I'm in British Columbia today, very rich in natural resources, as is much of Canada. And when we have American factories, a lot of those parts and materials are sourced in other areas. And frankly, if we do have high tariffs, it would force that manufacturing to move overseas so they could access the materials they needed.
Yeah, but Governor, that hasn't been his excuse. His excuse, the president has said, no, if we make the tariffs higher, then they'll just have to manufacture it here. They'll have to source the things here instead. It almost sounds like your argument hasn't gotten through to him at all.
Well, it's one of many sort of throw the mud against the wall arguments, right? It's everything from this will raise money to reduce the deficit, which it won't because the economic damage actually decreases revenue far more than the tariffs generate. This will, as you said, manufacturing, border security. I've heard preventing drugs from being imported illegally. I don't know if there's a deeply held belief there. It just seems like it's whatever the excuse of the day is. But I think it's a particularly counterproductive one to talk about manufacturing when we know that parts and materials are sourced across both countries, and it would devastate American manufacturing if we're unable to access materials and parts from Canada, Mexico, and other countries across the world. It's already hurting our manufacturing sector.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because the last time you were on our show, we highlight the fact that Canada is Colorado's biggest trading partner, and you would warn that tariffs would cause a recession. Have you seen that type of impact in your state so far?
The uncertainty has already delayed investment. As you know, capital and investment values certainty around what rules will look like for imports and exports. Many projects are being delayed. A lot of people are in a wait-and-see mode. There's still time to repair this relationship, to bring down tariffs and barriers. I think that would get the investment community to re-engage, creating jobs in Canada and the United States. But the longer it goes on, the harder it is to repair and build that confidence back that, frankly, we took as for granted as recently as last year.
I want to point out that your state was one of a dozen that argued tariffs would make the U.S. trade policy dependent on Trump's whims. Last month, the U.S. Court of International Trade agreed with you that Trump didn't have the authority. But on Tuesday, a federal appeals court agreed that the tariffs should remain in place while this case is being heard. So I wanted to sort of dig into that uncertainty and the court case as it continues to progress. What's the next step for you in your state to try and fight this as it is causing this uncertainty?
Absolutely. We're pursuing all avenues to do that, and we've argued in court, and we, as you indicated, won an initial court victory. The president doesn't actually have the authority unilaterally to impose these tariffs. We're also, of course, advocating in the halls of Congress with both Democrats and Republicans to more explicitly both prevent a president from having these tariffs, as well as to engage in trade policy will actually promote prosperity on both sides of the border. So we're leaving no stone unturned. And I say we because it's certainly not me alone. I want the Canadian people to know that many Americans feel this way, Democrats and Republicans. The tariffs are a hostile policy, particularly with allied countries like Canada.
We know in the past, in the previous trade war under Trump 1.0, there was a concerted effort by not only Canadian lawmakers, but also American lawmakers to try and appeal to the president and to say to him, look, this is going to have an impact. This is having an impact. What is happening behind the scenes right now? Because I think from the Canadian side of the border, it doesn't seem like any of those arguments, if they are happening in the Oval Office, are either getting through to him or the Secretary of the Treasury. Is there still that concerted effort on the state level and even, with a lot of the businesses that may be affected by, the supply chains? Are they still trying to make that argument with the president?
So remember the first time around, and the President Trump, the first time around, did blow up NAFTA. It created uncertainty for a while. It was replaced with the Canada, U.S., Mexico trade agreement, which was very similar to NAFTA and made some modest updates and improvements. That would be the best case for where we're headed now. The president is not, I want to be clear also, he's not singling out Canada. There is a tariff and trade war with countries across the world here. And what we're hoping, and I think he certainly his counselors have advised this, is let's mend our fences and correct this with Canada and Mexico. That's the low-hanging fruit. And then, of course, when you're talking about China, that's a more complicated scenario with lots of strategic and national defense aspects as well. But certainly with regard to our allies, Europe, Canada, Mexico, hopefully we can get this done quickly. President Trump did do that last time under some duress, but he did get there. Let's hope he gets there quickly this time as well.
Just in closing, it felt like in the first Trump presidency that there was a path to get to him, that if there was enough economic pain that he would reverse course and eventually did. Do you think that that is the same way to get to him and to make sure that he undoes these tariffs?
It's certainly a big part of what drives the political unpopularity of tariffs in Colorado, because the biggest issue I hear about from constituents, I think it's the same for many members of the Canadian Parliament, is cost of living. It's certainly, that's the case in Vancouver, where I am right now. Cost of living, housing, and tariffs directly increase the cost of living, right? Whether it's consumer goods you purchase or whether it's housing and the materials that go into housing. So it really runs contrary to the main pain point people are facing, which is why we're really focused on reducing costs. And of course, that means sourcing materials at the lowest possible cost to pass those savings along to our constituents who are working hard every day to earn a living.